It's 12 o'clock in Frisco, Texas, and it's time for Smoker Broker Radio with Robert Mesh, a.k.a. the Smoker Broker. Robert is the owner of Small World Realty and has employed hundreds of real estate agents in his 17-year career. He has instructed and mentored over 10,000 real estate agents at the highly acclaimed Champions School of Real Estate and is considered an expert in Texas residential realty. Robert is also an advocate of true entrepreneurial spirit and has helped many to transition from corporate America into the world of self-employment. And now live from the studio to your world, the Smoker Broker.
Hey, welcome to Smoker Broker. I'm Robert Mesh, and I'm the guy they call Smoker Broker. Love my buddy up there, always mimicking. He's done this long enough. He's done so many of these. He can do this in his sleep, mimicking the same way that I do. Happy Thursday. Hope everybody's doing well, as we are always doing, taking the Thursday slot. We've been doing it for almost 3 years, I think 2 or 3 years. I know 2 years for sure, and almost 3. Love being you guys with you on Thursday. Great time of the week before you guys get into the weekend to get a little bit of real estate knowledge. Always better to do it on Thursday versus Friday, because Friday really nobody cares about anything. So I always like to do the show on Thursday. Getting into the summer, we're continuing our move with the housing market just smoking hot. There were some significant things in real estate this past week that are worth mentioning. The lumber conversation is interesting because, we have all this demand for the materials for building, if you hadn't heard, have just been so hard to get. I mean, it's just because there's so much pressure in the building pipeline. But then this week, there's the discussion about the cost of lumber is going down. And that's a very odd comment for when people are like almost wanting to steal lumber because it's so expensive. In fact, it's been funny, all the memes in the past few weeks where you see someone who takes a picture of a lumber truck and they're like, this looks like a good bank robbery or something, because it's so ridiculous. I had one client that how did they say it? They purchased X amount of wood it was a remodel. They purchased X amount of wood for a remodel about 4 years ago. And I want to say it was $13,000. And then they came back and they said they bought the exact same amount of wood for the remodel they're doing this year. And it was like $20,000 to $30,000 more with the same amount of lumber, so it's crazy what's going out there. And it was just interesting to see the lumber fall. Now, I haven't looked at the economics of this conversation. I'm sure there's something behind it because it is still an excessive demand that's causing it, but there's got to be something weird there. But that was interesting with the pressure that's on the housing market right now to see that type of article out there. So I'm still looking for better explanations. And I'm actually going to study up more on it. But, I always look at current level events and things that we're doing in here with real estate and how it's affected by it. And that was certainly one that came up. Interest rates continue to hold steady. They have gone a little down, a little up. And we're going to continue to see that trend for the rest of the year, I believe. I don't think it's going to basically do anything major. There is some conversation that it starts tending to trend up a little bit as we get towards the end of the year. You're going to certainly see the economics with inflation as it continues to push up, and it is going to push up. You do not have to have a degree in economics from Princeton or Stanford to know that we are going to have inflation. You cannot give that kind of money out to the American people and print that amount of money without the cost of it going up. So it's going to happen. It's already happening if you pay attention to certain things. If you look at a few different things out there, you can already start to see that prices are creeping up just a bit on some of the most common things that we buy. And that process will continue. And probably in another 6 or 7 months, you'll actually it'll make a noticeable difference to those who are on a very fixed income and those who are watching their budget you'll start to see the price we pay for giving out money. Don't get me wrong. In no way is that attitude supposed to be that I'm against anything that we've done with sparking this economy. God knows it was needed. And I think we wouldn't be a third of the way where we are right now if that support wasn't given. Are there consequences to that? Yes. And we're going through those right now. But we'll tell you something I am surprised by. As we are at half point in the year, and in a week or two, we're already in July, and I'm surprised that the job loss ratio is not worse right now. I really thought as we moved into the beginning of the year, the pressure on the amount of jobs that would be lost would be much greater, as most of the corporations, funneled in, they buckled down and they cost cut and they started realizing they didn't need as many people. And I really thought that was going to result in more mass layoffs. I haven't seen that. I've seen it in some. I've got some friends that are affected by it, and I've certainly seen some companies absolutely go through that problem. But it's not as big as I thought it was going to be, which actually means that there might be a spark because of the lift of COVID and people backflowing, that some people held on just long enough to not only withstand COVID, but now to actually benefit from it because they can still get back into their business and the demand's higher than it ever was. So I'm surprised by that. And I'm happily surprised by it because that was my greatest worry outside of the terrible amount of deaths. I heard we crossed 600,000 last week, which, it's funny, terrible word. When you look at it, if you look back to last year, we're sitting here on pins and needles and we're talking about over 100,000 people. Like we're devastated by it. Now we've crossed 600,000. So it kind of just takes your breath away. And it's hard when you've gone so far and the world almost seems like it has some type of normalcy back to it. But with less than 600,000 Americans alone, not worldwide, and we still have our friends and partners in places like India still struggling with the virus itself, and those are backlash for another year or two. So it's awkward how the globe, we're coming back up, and what most people would say we're back to normal. We're still affected by what goes on overseas. We're still affected. We do a lot of business with India, with China. I mean, that's the majority of the American economy goes through those areas, and if they're still struggling with it, it's interesting to see how that affects us in the end. Because even though we're trying to get back to the normal track, they're still struggling with it, which means we'll have some effect of that too. So always an interesting world on today's show. Real estate's focused by all of this, which is why I open up every show with an intro on current events in real estate, because real estate is absolutely affected by what goes on in the economies and the world. It is the one true business that connects us all. It is the one true business that says we do all occupy the same planet, and we are all affected in certain ways by certain things. This planet is much closer than you think it is when you look at things like COVID and economics, and that is certainly what we are dealing with now. I love this particular show. It's one of my favorites. I was actually surprised when I was going through and looking at our previous shows. I always do that to see what hadn't gone on. And I was shocked that it's almost been a year that we've talked about working with the buyers. That's not something that should happen. We should talk about working with the buyers at least probably every quarter. So I was happy when I looked at them like, we haven't done that one in a while. And I'm happy about it because this show is geared towards agents and a little bit lesser to the general public itself, but the show is built for agents to learn things that they probably don't learn in any type of class or when they're by themselves or they're lost in a brokerage that's not helping them. This show is created to really cement those people into coming back to it and trying to gain knowledge that they don't have. In this particular episode, that is exactly what happens. We are going to lay out at least a good part of it, the procedure when you start working with a buyer, because the number one question that we get as a broker and at any supervisor level from a new agent is, what do I do next? Probably had that question 10 times this week alone. And this is one segment of 1,000 what do you do first segments, but this is one of them where we're going to show you. You've been asking us what you do, well, we're going to show you today. And I always bring my staff, Brian, so look, I've got, just so you all know
I
how
quit.
multitasked I am, I actually have a break into some of the online teaching I'm doing right now. That's like literally 20 hours. And when you're on Zoom, the names are popping up there and they're big. So right when I'm looking at Brent, who starts with a B, Brian comes up on the side. I've known Brent for quite some time. He's pretty much like family member to me, so I know his name very well. I got my buddy up there, Brent. He does the shows with me. He runs the show. And of course, I would love it when our top agents with us, top agents in the industry, people like Richard come on, because you get just live experience as to someone who has learned to expertise in this and share with you what they see day to day. So for once, I'm actually going to let them do a little bit more of the talking than I do, but everybody knows I'll cut in the entire time because I just can't help myself. So I'm going to let them start talking about, we are going to start going through what do we do when we start working with a buyer. All right, you guys start talking off so I can be quiet a little bit. Yeah. It looks like Brent's, immediately into this. Brent, are you okay? So look, that's another funny story today too. And you want to see how dedicated of agents I have.
I'm on a delay.
Both of these two are on vacation in Florida, and both of them didn't even hesitate to come on to the show. That doesn't show you the type of dedication they have. Now, I will say with that, yeah, their connections are probably going to be a little bit tough. So I'm going to see if they're able to do it. Rich, if he freezes, see if you can start covering with it, and if not, of course, I'll jump in as always. But Brent, do you got it? Or you're really like pausing there?
Am I? No,
yes.
I don't know.
You're
a delay.
Really bad.
There's a delay for my AirPod too, so I don't know.
Okay.
Oh, good.
You're barely there, but I guess it's okay to keep that status in there. You're kind of like the max headroom right now.
Is it?
Let me try to reconnect. Okay, I'll jump back in.
Okay, well, I'll go ahead and start, and Richard can help me because she knows the support level on there. When we start talking about working with buyers, one of the first things we'll do, especially in our firm, it should really be done in any firm, is we are detailed with checklists. Checklists are great on so many different levels because you're taught so much and you can only remember so much. But even if you expertise in the area, you still need the checklist. You still need to remind yourself, did I, in fact, do that? 21 years into this, I still refer to the checklist every once in a while. Sometimes I'm like, I can't remember if I did that or not. So what we're doing at this point is we're going to talk about when we have someone that's told us that they are ready to start looking for houses. We're going to skip the part about how we met them, what the disclosures were, all the agency side of it, because we're going to assume that's already been done. That's for another show, of course. But then we're going to actually talk about, we're here. The buyer is doing the old, hey, I'm ready to go. You're brand new. And now is when they get to that and they're like, okay, I'm brand new. That my friend just asked me, they want to go looking at houses this week. And it literally is a question that we have almost every week, 5 or 6 times, which we love it because that means we have more new agents coming on. And this week was no different. All right, Brent. So when they come through, Brent, let me wave at me so I can see you're still good. Oh, he's still frozen again. It's brutal.
I can go.
All right. Oh, wait, there he is again, too.
Just go.
Richie, you go. What's smart? Do the buyer checklist with us.
We've got a buyer. First thing we've got to do prior to, we're assuming you've established what your duties are. You've given them the information about brokerage services, all of that, right? We need to know what they are pre-qualified for or pre-approved for. Make sure they have a quality lender. Make sure we have given the lender a phone call to introduce ourselves, just so you're kept in the loop process, that you've built a relationship. As soon as you have gotten a pre-approval letter, pre-qualification letter, you know what kind of, then you've had the conversation with your buyer about neighborhoods where they have, if they or they need you. You start appointments for looking at homes. The biggest got to make sure pre-approved or pre-qualified for to purchase before you start showing them houses. You'll start,
Rich, when we do that, one of the things about the pre-qual or the talk with the lender, it's not a matter of or it's not a matter just of making sure that they're capable. One of the biggest dangers in us starting to show a house to someone who isn't pre-approved is we start showing them houses that they might not be able to afford. And y'all, look, there is nothing worse than getting someone excited about seeing homes, and you show them some really nice homes, and then they find out that that's like 50 to 100,000 too much, and now we have to go show them those houses that are in that price range. That is not something that is very fun. So it's not just a matter of making sure they're ready to go. It's also a matter of making sure they are where they really should be and that we don't overextend them.
So usually what I do, I help my clients once they've figured out, say their budget, they're pre-approved for up to a 500,000. I always offer my clients to start looking at the lower end of that year. Don't start at your max. You want to be able to have some wiggle room that in case you need to increase your budget a little bit, you have something. You start right at the mark, and you know, I guarantee the house that you're going to fall in love with is going to be about 600, 650.
John, let me give you a takeaway there. We do takeaways from the show, and Richard just gave you a big one. You know, too many agents get so caught up in selling to the max, and a lot of the general public perceives us as being like that, and that's actually not true. In fact, it's the furthest thing from the truth. Rich is even more of a luxury real estate agent, and even she knows that the comment always should be, let's start lower and try to see if we can find something there. We really do want to manage the process. I mean, Brent, do we want anybody to ever be house poor at all?
I do, because that means I have to sell again and I can make more money.
Well, you also like mobile homes, and you could live there if you had to.
This is true. No, I mean, you don't want to push people like that, because you want them to enjoy their house. You want them to have a good experience. And, you know, we can only advise, though. You know, there are people that, you know, you can say, hey, I don't think you should push it, and it's up to them to listen.
Well, and I think that's where Rich is going with that. We have to start with, this is where you're at. But, right. I mean, if they insist on it, I'm like, I'll go as wherever you're approved for, but I'm well aware that the highest approval level sometimes isn't going to be the most comfortable for you. And everybody's life is different on how they leave. And kind of where I'm going with that, the example, and it's a big one too. And we've talked about this on several shows throughout the years. Just because somebody appears wealthy, I will tell you the majority of the people who appear wealthy, and you know it because they usually tell you. Most of the wealthy people tell you that they're wealthy. They're like, well, I can afford this or that. Just because you make a lot of money doesn't mean you're as wealthy as you think. I'll tell you, the majority of the people that I've ever had that had loan issues or credit issues have been the people that make a ton of money. Because you know one simple fact about a lot of people who make a lot of money, if they make a lot of money, they spend a lot of money. And that's one thing we're talking about here. We want to make sure we're guarding that. Just because it says from an income level that they're good, their debt ratios might be high. Maybe we don't want them in that type of house. Now, again, it's not our decision, but at least we should point out, sure is going to be tight the way you're pushing on that thing there. So that's good.
Well, and I will say too, with this market, and we'll probably touch on it later, but you know, they're going to have to be prepared to cover the differences in appraisal. So if you have them already pushed to the limit, I mean, and the appraisal comes in bad, I mean, they're not going to be able to qualify for that house. So you want them to have wiggle room in their offer.
And that number is.
Did she cut another two, Brent, to you?
Yeah, I can't hear her.
Yeah, Go ahead and cover for her till she gets back on.
It wasn't a good point she was going to make, so that's why the system just cut out.
Yeah, we can't hear you, Richard. All right, Brent, go on the next checklist there. Keep it on. You're going on a checklist on the next things we're going to do when we're starting off with them. Better, yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Brent, go ahead and watch the next one there.
Yeah, all right. So I had my checklist on my phone, and now I switched over to my phone. So I'm just going to wing it because I know the checklist. So, you know, we've already established what they're looking for, right? We want to talk about what area, what size, you know, how old of a house do they want to go, new construction. And to be honest, right now, that almost is out the window, right? It's kind of like we can maybe narrow it down to what can you afford? What are you prepared to get? And we can maybe hit a couple of things on their checklist. But in this market, for them to get their dream house, it's going to be pretty difficult.
So that's a great takeaway today too. And again, the show can be very, just as good for me as it can be for a lot of the people who watch on archive. And actually it just reminded me that we probably need to go back over with our own crew. The checklist is created, as everything I teach training wise, for historical correctness. But right now, that's out the window. So a lot of things that we typically ask a buyer for, we probably, even with our own agents, we need to start cautioning them on, well, look, that's how you're supposed to do it. But right now, that is not what we're going to ask. Now, we do that because we review all of our agents' files as they come through to make sure they're right, and we point those things out. But it did remind me that maybe on our checklist, we probably need to start saying, y'all be careful with those things, because you should know that some of that stuff that we're asking would not be things we're asking in such of a market. That was a good point, Brent.
All right. Yeah, and go ahead, Rich.
No, go ahead. You finish.
I was just going to ramble.
Idiot.
So let's say you have now once met all this criteria. You have found a house you can make an offer on, or a house that a client likes, they're interested in. There's a lot of work on our side to help them decide. Now, not in a market that we're in right now, in which is very atypical, but a typical market, if we're looking, there's a lot of things to verify. Find out all of the comps that are in the neighborhood, what has sold in the last 6 months, so you can help them make an appropriate offer. Make sure that the clients verified the schools that their children are going to go to, because redistricting and zoning happens a lot during the summer break, which is usually when a lot of families are purchasing homes. Got to make sure if there are any neighborhood amenities or anything that are going to be added or going to be changed. Are there any new schools that are zoned to be in the area? That can affect their commute. That can affect their everyday, day-to-day life for that neighborhood. So these are all certain things that they're relying on us to help them find this information. So there's a lot of that involved in, and I think if you don't have that ahead of time, like verified all of that information ahead of time, I think things can get really, really dicey. Say their offer gets accepted, and then they're like, wait, it's not the right school. I don't have a house.
Yeah, definitely the competency level shows in if they've asked us certain things that we have to be pretty specific and make sure that we followed up on those. What are some of those things that we start looking at? If they've asked us to go look at houses, obviously, Rich is starting to talk about some of those. What are even some of the more specific ones? I mean, what do we need to know from these people as we build this search?
Gotta look at closure. The buyer provide, correct? When you
Brent, help her in when you see her. When you see her cut in, you go ahead and I can hear a little bit, but go ahead and respond what she's saying.
Well, that sounded like it was alien language, so I don't know what she was saying, but I think we're going to talk about, they're going to look at area, location, commute. Those are the things that we want to make sure that they know. And she was talking about schools. That's a good point for her. And then, another thing is property taxes. Different areas have higher property taxes than others, which is going to affect their payment. So, as long as we've got them, set up with a good lender that's going to be able to tell them what a realistic price range is for them, and then we have to prepare them on how to be aggressive in this market, because if you're not getting your deal.
Yeah. All right. Now do the thing that I asked you to do. When we start building the search, what do we need to ask them? How big is that house? How big of a house do you want?
Right.
Where do you want it to be? What's the price? Those things. Start going that route with me.
I hate my life. Yeah, Rich, are you back?
I think I am. I don't know if I am back.
Yeah, you are. You're back.
I'm back.
That's better than ever.
Are you asking what kind of things that they were trying to ask? What features that they need in a house?
We have to put this in the MLS to build them a search. What are those points?
Yep. So how many bedrooms? Pool? No. Yes. Are you have to make sure is it in a mud district? That can affect some of the things that they do.
Lot size.
Lot size, number of bathrooms, there's so many features. Do you want a water view? Do you want a lake view? Do you want to be on a golf course? I mean, there's 100 features you could ask for, but most people have an idea of the number of bedrooms that they need, a number of bathrooms they want. They have a rough idea of square footage.
Yeah, we keep it pretty broad.
Three things, very broad initially, and then we start looking at a few houses, and then they, can fine tune. Okay, you know what? I think I really like a house that's on a golf course, or I really like it in a gated community. I really need 3 garages. I think 2 is going to be too tight.
Yeah, one of the things I like to do is exactly like you are talking about. I get the specifics. How many square feet? What's your price range? what area do you want to be in, how many rooms. If it's the one that y'all didn't mention is if it is pre-existing, how old can it be? So that's a good one. If it's pre or new, do you want a new house? Do you want a pre-existing one? And then when I get those, then I do a generic. What else is something that's special that you need? And what else is out there that I need to know about? And then that's when those comments that y'all are talking about come in. Well, we want a bigger yard, or we want a big kitchen. And then that's when we have to be more detailed when we go through and create the search, which that's a good transition because I want to talk about that because this is helpful for a lot of the agents too, because this is something they struggle with when they're new. So when we go into the MLS and we start creating these searches are pretty general with the information we requested from them, but they did ask for some things that were more special. So when we have that, it is hard. There are custom searches you can do on the MLS, but sometimes we have to do the general search first, and then we have to go personally in and see if any of that stuff's available to them. So kind of go through some of the experiences y'all have when you go through the MLS or when you're putting the search in, but you have to pause because you're like, wait a minute. Talk to them about, before you send that off, what is it that you're looking to make sure of when you send it off to them? There's some obvious things in there. I want to make sure we have that down. We are talking about the beginning of working with the buyer.
Well, the obvious thing is the price, right? Because a lot of times you're going to find what they want, and it's $100,000 more than they want to spend, and that's a good way to piss off a buyer, right? They're going to think, oh, you just want to get a bigger commission.
Great takeaway from the show. What he just said.
Oh my,
that's a good one.
Yeah, that's never a good thing. You know, I just tell them from the very beginning that I'm gonna send you more than you want to see, because if I narrow it down so much, there's gonna be homes that are gonna be out there that you're not gonna see that you would have probably moved on. So I just tell them I know you want 3-car, but maybe there's an awesome home that has 2-car, but you love everything else. So I'm gonna send you everything, and if you don't like it, just ignore it.
So that's a good takeaway too. Another takeaway from the show becomes, we know the search won't be perfect. We're going to send it to them. We are going to outright tell them, hey, look, we know there's going to be some in there that you said you don't want, but I cannot make it to where it's just absolutely perfect with what you want. So just ignore the ones that we, like for instance, if they say, hey, look, I do not want any 2-car, that's probably a bad example. I don't want any type of 2-car garage. And it just makes sense that those are in the search. You're like, well, just ignore the 2-car garage then, because we know you don't want that. Sometimes we have to tell them that because the searches are not so defined. I use a bad example because you can isolate garages, but you understand the point. There are some things that we just can't go in there and alter. I'm trying to think of one. There should be like 20 off the top of my head, but I can't think of any. But
I thought pool is one of them.
What's that?
A pool.
Yeah, well, but you can see the pool's in there. I mean, the pool, you can register the pool. I think the one that gets me is the 1.5s. The 1.5s are not labeled in the MLS, but you have them.
It's labeled as a 2-story.
Yeah, it's only a 2. That's one that sometimes we have to go in and filter and say, well, it doesn't search that way. It doesn't have a 1.5, which I don't know why. I don't know why it's so hard to do that. But
well, and the other thing is, if you're putting
thing in there.
If you're putting in very specific search requirements, you're relying on the listing agent to have entered every detail
correctly
on that thing incorrectly. And so if they're lazy and they don't fill out everything, maybe the house has a gazebo, but it's not in there, or maybe there's something very specific. So we keep everything broad, stay within a price range, within a range of square footage. Bedrooms kind of a range, but you can make that pretty close. Acreage, like I've got people that want an acre, but I'll still search 0.4 acres and up because there might be just a great lot with a green belt beside it or something like that. So just keeping it very broad. There are specifics like a pool, like Richard was saying, that if they don't want a pool, then I'm not going to send anything with a pool. They just don't want it, right? So now the opposite can be true though, that if they're demanding a pool and it doesn't have one, I still send it. Be like, because if you get a good price, you can put your own pool in, right? That's something a little bit easier.
Yeah. Talk about, Richard, when you, once you've got your search down and you're ready to send it, what's something that you're concerned about from an overall, if you look at your search, what's one thing you want to make sure of that you're sending to them? I'm
sorry, you're going to have to specify it.
Yeah, and I I almost stopped because I realized it was almost too general the way I said it.
I don't know the correct list.
No. It's my the way I explained it. I actually almost stopped in mid sentence with it.
I'm Ron
trying to think of
Burgundy.
a better way to question it, but I don't think I can. The when you pull that search,
Mm-hmm.
one of the things we get immediately concerned with is if that search comes up and there's only 2 or 3 houses on it, we have a problem, right?
Yep.
Because we're about to send that to somebody, and we know that those 2 or 3 houses, if they're on there, chances are they probably don't like those 3, which means they're going to have a tough time finding something. And that the point I want to make here, and this is tough too, because I think this is more of a historical teaching than it is live, but it actually can be applied to right now, probably more so than ever. If I pull a search and if there's not at least 10 to 15 homes I can send them, I'm probably going to struggle. And on top of that, when we do send them, let's actually say we do find a list that's good enough to send them. I always tell mine, I need to know that there's at least 3 or 4 on there that right now you could buy if they were available. If they come back and they say, well, there was one on there, but I'm not even sure, we're going to have to tell them, y'all, we might have issues here, because that's all that's out here right now. And that's why I was thinking even more so right now that we probably pull some that there's just not anything. So we want to tell them. Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I think it goes back to, I feel like we repeat this theme, or maybe, I don't know, I repeat it every time I have this kind of on this show. If this comes to managing expectations, which is a big part of having a buyer.
I love that.
From the very beginning, we have to be very frank and honest about what's available and what's not available. If you're wanting to look for a certain house only in Coppell and it doesn't exist, I have to tell you, it doesn't exist. I can't just make up a listing from somewhere. Right. And we have all of us agents have networks where we can, interact with other agents and be like, hey, is there something coming soon? All of that.
Right.
But you don't have access to that right away and immediately until you have the specifics the buyer needs. So, and it can take time. And so there's a lot of managing of expectations. So when that happens every once in a while, especially in the market that we're in right now, I really ask my clients, have you ever considered a certain other neighborhood or, to keep your commute? You want to be 30 minutes away from work. All right. What about 30 minutes east instead of 30 minutes west?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's
an
excellent explanation.
And that way you still highlight all the other things that are important to them. So, you still make sure that they are still looking at good school districts if they have children, or making sure that it's a walking distance from grocery stores or very close to highways. These are all things that we have to fine tune as agents.
Yeah, y'all, let me tell you, those of you who are watching, especially those who are going to watch on archive, the newer agents, that's a really good explanation she just gave you. First of all, she knows, and anybody else knows me too, managing expectations is everything with me. Almost every type of class or topic I teach has something to do with setting expectations. It's just good business expense. But she is going literally through the things that you should be being prepared for and paying attention to as we build these things. That person needs to know that. Notice how she said that she didn't have success in the place that they were actually looking for. She didn't just say, well, I can't do anything and stop. She went to the next level. And the next level is, well, what about here? This is something that's similar that maybe was a little bit off in your search, but I think by what y'all told me, because I have expertise in this area, that you should know, that you should maybe look at this one. I think it's similar. That's a very good, she says it's so polished because that's how she is. And she says it's so nonchalant. But if you're a new person, you should be listening to that.
Yep.
That's something you should be writing down, because that's not something we taught you in the book. We don't teach you that in regular comps and sales. You have to learn it. And she's basically telling you that's one of the first steps, is that you're perceptive enough to know that, well, that didn't work. What else can we do for them? So I really loved that one section. In fact, if I'm new and I'm watching it, I rewind that section here and listen to it again. That's how good that one is.
2 points on that too. Like, I think Rich has got a great point, and especially with the location, we'll get a lot of people, like, I operate mostly in Collin County, and people, I want to be in Plano or Allen. We'll be like, have you looked at McKinney? Have you looked at Melissa? Have you looked at Anna? Because you could drive seriously another 15 minutes and, get a much better house, bigger house for what you were going to pay. And they don't realize. They look on the map and they're like, oh, I don't want to drive far. And it's like, are you sure? The other thing is, like Robert, you were saying, if we're pulling up a search for them and maybe only 2 houses show up or 1, that's going to discourage them. And as agents, we need to make sure that we have exhausted all options. Have we checked to see if there's new construction in the area? Because there's nothing worse than sending 2 homes in the MLS and nothing pops up for 2 weeks. And then you hear, oh, well, we just went and signed up with D.R. Horton. We went ahead and just built a house.
Because they drove the area.
Because they drove
Yes.
the area.
Which is what we have to do.
Yeah.
If
They drove the area
especially
'cause we didn't set
you've
the
got to
expectation
drive
first.
the area, because not all new home constructions are listed in the MLS. Not all of them are all listed on D.R. Horton or
Hardly any.
hotels'
Yep.
websites, right? They
Yep.
might have some coming soon, but you've got, and again, you don't, as a new agent, you don't necessarily know all of the new home builders that are available. And there's new little niche neighborhoods that are built by, like the parent company might be D.R. Horton, but then they have like a little side company for just one small subdivision that has 30 houses.
Yeah,
You
give-
won't
let me
know
give
that
you a little
exists
tip on
until
that
you
too,
drive it.
Because I struggle with that when I first got started, and the technology has changed, obviously in 20 years, that it helps a lot of new agents out. Y'all should realize in whichever market that you're in, your MLS has actually a new home search. It's not in the regular one like in the matrix system that most of y'all know. It's in the one of the side. It's usually on the one below. You'll recognize it. It says new. It's like new 1 or something.
New builder home source professional.
Yeah, new builder home source. That's basically telling you there's a lot of new homes out there that you might not be aware of. Another thing I want to touch on that was a great takeaway from both of them is they're being very subtle in warning you that when a client starts driving the area, believe it or not, that is not something that's good for you. Because if they're driving the area, that's a very polite way of them saying, you haven't given me what I need, and that's why I'm driving the area, because I need to find somewhere else. That is not good to hear. And just so you know, that doesn't go away. That happened to me probably 3 weeks ago. Now, everybody knows I don't necessarily, I still handle long-term clients and friends of friends, and I obviously don't do the very detail of going show or putting the stuff up anymore, but I still am involved in the transaction. One of them that I lost. Oh, it's so awful. God. I teach my agents never to do that. But I lost one because I felt we had given them all the stuff they need. And next thing I know, they're telling me they're driving neighborhoods. I'm not hypocritical. I knew when they said that, I'm like, that means I didn't do what I was supposed to. Now, to my defense, they did go a complete 360 on me and went to like an entire different area of town. And I'm not sure I would have ever caught that even if I went through the procedures. But maybe if I had asked, a little bit more pushy, hey, which area, how far will you go? Like Richard was talking about, maybe I could have saved that. So, the point here, this isn't so nonchalant as you think. We are talking about being very inquisitive to that buyer to make sure we know not only where they want to be, but more important, probably where they could be. Remember, we expertise in the area. If it's a relo especially, they don't know. We do. And even someone who lives here a lot of times isn't a specialist. We know those areas. Richard?
I was going to say, I'm going to make a suggestion. Again, this is, like Robert said, he made a mistake. We've all made these little, faux pas, and it happens. But the other thing, I always remind my clients, like if I'm working with a new, for looking at pre-existing homes and you see like, okay, you're not finding what you want. I always tell them like, hey, I know on the weekend, sometimes you guys are free and you drive around. If you see a neighborhood that I haven't identified, let me know. I'm going to find out all the information possible.
And
when you go in and
don't
build,
go into it unless we're there.
Don't go into, and I tell them all the time, like, okay, if you go to an open house or, go to one of the showrooms, tell them you are represented by an agent. Tell them that if I'm not available for whatever reason, tell them you have representation. And a lot of the times buyers think they don't need a buyer's agent when they're purchasing a new existing home, but you do, because there's so much negotiating room on that table generally, whether it be in terms of upgrades, whether it be in terms of paying a premium on a lot. That a builder is not in the business of giving away a home for the least amount of price as possible. They're
Especially
going to
now.
upcharge you for everything possible. And the best thing they can hope for is an unaware, uneducated buyer that just thinks, oh, I just want a new house. I don't want to deal with the old house. I'll just go and pay them whatever they're asking.
So let me add something to
That-
what Richard just said, because she gave you the blueprint for the script on why you tell a buyer that before they walk into new construction. But one thing I've found over the years, of course, that's the most important. That's how I train, exactly what she said. But one of the other things that I've noticed that's actually been effective, and it's actually true, a lot of, and it really puts an emphasis on your buyer to not do this. A lot of times I'll tell them exactly what Richard just said, and then kind of as a punchline, I'll say something like, hey, look, I'm telling you right now, you don't want to go in there without me, because if you do and they get your information, they will beat you down like there is no tomorrow. One of the greatest benefits of having an agent, and believe it or not, it's the fact that we take the beating. Let them call us 100 times if they want to. But if you go in there and start chumming away with somebody and put your stuff down, most people don't want that. Most people don't want the aggravation. It's really the car sales thing. The moment you walk out there, they're right on you. You're like, ugh. That does happen in housing. And if you don't want that, which you shouldn't, then don't go in there. Let us
And
go in there. They don't
with
need
a
you
new
up so long.
construction and with a new construction home, again, when you're a new agent, that some of this comes with experience. You help a couple of clients and you start looking, not necessarily even making an offer, but just have an idea of, okay, you know what? An upgrade for all hardwood floors in an entire first floor of a house, generally the upgrade is about this much.
Yeah.
So if you find out that a new builder that you're going to, again, some of these points don't make logical sense right now because lumber is outrageous. New homes aren't necessarily available. You're on a wait list, but generally, you have an idea that, okay, all new hardwood floors and the entire first floor is about a $10K surcharge, right? Versus carpet everywhere. If you see that this builder is charging you $20K, you know for a fact that there's at least that much wiggle room, potentially, right? For you to offer. And I just had this experience. It's so funny. A client purchased a house with me, I think 4 or 5 years ago in a new community out in Prosper. And initially the buyer's husband never told this to me, but he thought when I made a certain offer or told him they should make this offer to the builder, he thought I was being crazy, that I was going way low. I was almost insulting the new home builder, that he wouldn't ever purchase it. And we bought it for exactly that number because they accepted it.
Yeah, I love
My
it.
clients were going to pay $35,000 over because that's what the builder told them.
That's incredible. The let's and just so you know, this is usually a 4-part session, which is why we chop it up because it takes a long time to go through it. Before we have about I don't know, we have about 10 more minutes, 15 more minutes, but I'm going to make it just about 10. I want to talk about just the next phase so we can have a nice clean handoff to the next time we do this. Let's say we got the search ready. We gave them those searches. Let's tell especially the new agents out there, how do we get those things scheduled, and what's the plan once we schedule them? What do we need to look at when we're going to go show those houses as far as timing and how we're going to drive it? So let's do that really quick. And then, Brenda, as soon as we cut that off, let's go to just get our sponsors, and then we'll cut it off there, okay?
Okay. Richard, you want to take that or you want me to take that?
You go ahead.
Yeah, you go ahead on
Okay.
this one, right?
All right. So when I'm scheduling, first of all, new agents will get beat up all the time by their buyers. That we're going to want to see 30 homes in one day. And more experienced agents are going to say, you need to pick like 5. Like I'm not doing that all day. Pick your top 5, and we're going to go see those. And, when I take all the listings, I take the MLS numbers and I put them all into the search, and then I see them all on the map. And then I am going to pick the one furthest away from my house, and I'm going to map it and estimate how much time it's going to take to get to each house. It's an hour-long showing window on each, and I stagger them by about 15 minutes each if the drive's not that bad. So by the time I'm done with the last one, I'm just towards the end of that showing window, and then I'm closer to my house on the way back.
I do
that
a
simple
30-minute
information,
buffer
it's time.
time.
It's not,
No, and sometimes you get buyers that want to spend forever in there, which that kind of screws up your time frame.
That happens a lot. So I tend to do, it's interesting. I tend to do a 30-minute buffer time between the houses to include, okay, we're going to look at the house for about 15, 20 minutes, sometimes 25 because they want to really revisit. and then
Right.
it's going to take me another 5, 10, 15 minutes to get to the next house.
Yep. Yeah, it just depends on the distance between them.
Just
So it's like,
yes.
yeah, estimate about 15 minutes. Some take longer. I had buyers that walked in and they're like, oh, I can't stand this house. And then they spent 20 minutes and they're trashing it. Like, why are we here? Let's go. Come on. We got things to do.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, the main thing I would say in this market is be ready the day that it hits the market. You gotta be one of the first ones in if you want to get that house. And you know, I had some of our agents ask me like, hey, what's the best day to list a house? And I'm like, in this market, it doesn't matter. Put it on whenever. So if it's like I just listed one yesterday, you better go be ready to see it on a Wednesday morning. Go get in there.
Yeah, which is, again, I've been saying this the last few months now. My biggest worry is the agents that are coming through, I just hope they're being taught historically correct, because if they're not going to know what to do when the market gets back to normal, which, again, hopefully y'all appreciate as our audiences. That's what we do. We show you what you're supposed to do this, but then we break it down to what's happening. That's actually one of the most advantageous parts of this show, is that it's current, and not only is it telling you what we're supposed to do, it says, well, but right now, this is what we have to do, because this process is completely different as well. You know, we don't usually say, let's show on a minute's notice, but right now we're at a point where we really don't have a choice. All right, let's go ahead, Brent, go ahead and do our sponsors for us, and then we'll give them a little bit of line. We're going to come back and we're going to finish this in the next week or two. We're going to do some more of this stuff. So let's go ahead.
Okay. Awesome. So our first sponsor is Martin Cooley with BPG Inspections. He is our go-to home inspector. We, of course, always give our clients a number of inspectors to choose from, but Martin is the inspector that we prefer. He is always on time or early, finishes in a timely manner, gets the report to you the same day, and all reports are color-coded. Red for serious issues and blue for minor things to look at. You can always book him at bpginspections.com or reach him at 817-401-3240. And last but not least is Greg Holdberg with Liberator Health Insurance. Your simple solution to affordable healthcare is here. Join the Liberator movement and take control of your healthcare. Customize your healthcare plan to fit your healthcare and budget needs. Use any doctor or hospital without a penalty, in or out of network. Teledoc is included in all plans. No annual deductibles and no copay. Liberator Deal of the Week. A family of 5 got great benefits, including a health savings account that caps out at $5,000 to cover any out-of-pocket medical expense, all for just $569 a month. As an independent agency, Liberator is committed to transforming healthcare in Texas through innovative healthcare plans that are affordable and rich in benefits. For more information and to get a quick quote, call or text Greg Holdberg, independent health insurance broker, at 214-886-4688, or visit them at liberatorhealthinsurance.com.
Yeah, thank you, Brent. Yeah, we love our sponsors. There's some good guys out there. We don't put anybody on the show that we haven't used quite a bit, and we're not super comfortable with. Hey, look, I want to thank both Brent and Richa. I don't usually thank Brent because he's supposed to be here anyways. And Richa, I'm always going to thank. But even more so today, I just want to make a point, and it's biased and because it's mine, but, you know, to have 2 agents that have done this that long and be on vacation, and obviously even having to have technical difficulties with their Wi-Fi, to cut time out of their day to come on, not even forced. Well, Brent is, but even then,
Coerced.
that shows the quality of the agents we bring through, and the good-heartedness of them and their willingness to help other people out there. So I want to especially thank both of them today, even Brent, for doing that. This section, some of you are like, oh, wait, I thought I was going to do all the working with buyer. Well, if you go through any of my teaching, it's always long. It always takes a long time. So this is one section probably out of 4. I think, well, actually next week, I think we are going to have a leadership. I think Mr. George Giovanni is going to be on with us. So we'll probably do that. But then we're going to follow the next week. We'll come back into the same conversation and start off right where we left off. So want to thank everybody. I hope you guys have a great week. Keep cruising through. We're going to be at July 4th before you know it. And you know, school will be back in less than a month. The world goes round and round. It's quick. It's fast. So let's hurry up and do the things we need to do. Thank y'all for watching. Keep watching on archive. Keep sending to people else you know. Y'all have a good one. Brent, Mark, I gotta literally split. Richard, thank you so much.
Goodbye.
Literally split. Ew. Oh.